Wow, there's a lot of people here. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming this evening, and excited to talk to you tonight about the American dream. 1 year ago today, I had about $100 in my bank account. I had an upcoming wedding that I did not contribute a single penny to yet. I had no idea how I was going to pay rent, and honestly, I was broke. So you might be asking, why am I in this financial situation to begin with? Well, one, it's a pandemic, and two, I'm a filmmaker. So you might be asking yourself, what did an unemployed filmmaker do during the pandemic? Well, some of us did a lot of what everyone else did in this room. We played a lot of board games, we learned how to make sourdough bread, watched way too much Tiger King, but some of us embraced our craft and decided to tell stories. And that's what exactly I did. I made my first feature film, a documentary feature film titled Bad X, about my family. This film, it is my American dream. And I'll get to that, but I want to show you a clip first.
Tell me about these photos.
Show it to the camera like this.
Yeah, just talk about them.
It's a picture of our baby at the time, David. April 17, 1975, when everything changed in Cambodia. My mom survived with 6 children, make our way to Michigan.
When we first came to Bad X and opened up a donut shop, we didn't exactly fit in.
We live in a community that's 97% white.
In a town with less than 4,000 residents, it's not easy making a living off of donuts.
So eventually we decided to change it into a restaurant. It felt like building the American dream.
And our whole lives just changed, shut down.
This is a global pandemic.
Increasing numbers of cases and deaths here in Michigan.
Bars, restaurants, coffee shops, all ordered by Governor Whitmer to stop normal business.
When you grow up knowing what it's like to have nothing, you're always afraid of going back to that point. After leaving Cambodia for everything America has to offer, everything we were afraid of is happening.
It's a hard time that we're going through right now. Every day is a battle.
If something happens to you, nothing matters anymore.
Racist rhetoric against Asian Americans has become a real problem.
If this community turns against us, then our whole lives can be wiped away.
You're going to end up digging yourself your own grave.
We got this letter today from a very angry customer. My family and many will be changing our restaurant routine, and Rachel's is no longer a choice. You could.
We had to cut it a little bit short because we're on time, but Bad X. Is anyone here familiar with the community Bad X? Oh, we have a couple people. All right. So for those of you who aren't familiar, yes, it's a real name of a real place about 2.5 hours north of here. We're all from Michigan. We all go like this. It's located in the Thumb. It's a very small rural community, less than 3,000 people, 97% white. Politics lean generally more conservative, but I'll tell you, it's a wonderful place to grow up. And it's also where my family owns a restaurant called Rachel's, named after my mom. She's in the front row. So a question I often get asked, doing all these Q&As is, did you set out to make this film? And honestly, the answer is yes and no. It's no, because I think if we all go back to the pandemic, we thought, ooh, maybe this will last a week, 2 weeks, and we'll go back to our normal lives. Joke's on us. Ended up lasting much longer than that. But it's yes because I've always known I wanted to share my family story long before I picked up the camera and began making Bad X. My mom, she's a Mexican-American woman, and my dad is a Cambodian refugee. That's him right there at 16 years old. See, my dad, he escaped one of the worst genocides in recent history, known as the Cambodian killing fields. He lost 7 members of his family. And more importantly, he escaped, and he was able to get my grandma and his 5 siblings out alive. Can you imagine that? I could spend hours talking about my dad's stories of surviving Cambodia, and I do plan on telling those stories one day, but that's for another time. Anyways, my parents, they met in the mid-'80s, fell in love, decided to raise a family, and of all places, moved to Bad Axe, Michigan to open up a donut shop. That's little me right there. Baker's Dozen, that was the name of the donut shop. And it's actually the name of my company today. I call my company Baker's Dozen Films. And it was really tough trying to raise a family for them and to keep a donut shop going. I mean, this is a town less than 3,000 people. You're selling donuts for 50 cents a piece. It was a failure. So they adapted, they changed it into an ice cream shop, which is a much better idea. That didn't work out. And eventually they decided to change it into a restaurant. But it was still a struggle. You see, my biggest fear growing up, and I say this on behalf of my entire family, was losing our house. That's our house we live in today. Our house didn't look like, that's what house we live in today, but it doesn't look like that anymore. It was, 7 of us living in a house that was less than 1,000 square feet. And I remember always watching movies and TV shows when, a character's house would get foreclosed and they would take everything that belonged to the family and leave them on the streets. That was a genuine fear I had as like a 6 and 7-year-old. So we were forced to work together as a family to keep the business afloat. My older sister, she was the head cook of the restaurant from the time she was honestly like 11 or 12. My second older sister, Michelle, she was a head waitress. I was a dishwasher, and I'm still the best dishwasher to have set foot in that business today. And my youngest sister, Raquel, she was a little too young to work at the time, but she was that joy that we needed. I'll also say she's running the restaurant right now by herself as we speak. So here we are as a family trying to keep a roof over our head, trying to keep this restaurant alive. But we were also one of the very few family of color, the only Cambodian Mexican family, probably in like a 100-mile radius in Bad Axe. I've always struggled for many years of my life, and I think each of my siblings did too, about what our place was in this country. Where did we fit in? I remember my first day of riding the bus and going to kindergarten, and this kid told me I couldn't sit with them because I'm an N-word and I should sit in the back. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I vividly remember having this conversation with my mom. And it was one of these first moments where I felt this sense of being other. And that continued for years. I wanted to fit in with my community. I wanted to fit in with my white friends. And you hide part of who you are. I used to I remember my first time bringing a school lunch from home. And it's basically white rice with this dry shredded pork we call bat young. And I remember kids just made fun of it, and they thought it was the weirdest thing I was doing. And you kind of laugh it off, and you don't bring it to school again. That was me assimilating. That was me trying to fit in. And I guarantee my siblings, each of them, had their own experience of doing that. We were hiding part of who we were because we didn't want to feel that sense of other. It wasn't until I came to school here in the University of Michigan in 2011 where I began to embrace who I was. And that had to do with getting to meet other people of color who came from these rural communities who were brave enough to talk about their experience. I realized I wasn't the only one. And I wanted to start loving my past and where my parents came from and what my roots were. And I also realized that my parents, in many ways, they were also dealing with the same struggle, because for them, they just wanted to keep their head down. They didn't want to cause too much trouble in the community. just work hard, keep a roof over your family's head, keep your business going. But I didn't see all that growing up. It wasn't until I began to embrace my own identity. It was also around this time that my oldest sister, Jacqueline, she's here tonight, she graduated from the same university, and she got her first big girl job, we'll call it. It was working in the automotive industry. This was the first time in our family we had a supplemental income to support the family and support the business. Jacqueline, being the oldest sibling, she always felt this responsibility to not only take care of me and my two other siblings, but the whole entire family. So what did she do with her first paycheck that year? She decided to invest it into the restaurant. The restaurant was really ugly before 2011. It had these old white tile floors. It looked like a doctor's office. And what Jacqueline did, she was so committed because she spent her whole life working at this restaurant. She wanted to change it around. So we put in this beautiful patio, and we worked really hard as a family still. And for me, by this time, I was already living in Los Angeles, so I was really proud to watch this from afar. And it was around this time like I knew that the story I wanted to share one day was my family's American dream story. Here's all of us now. 4 siblings with their 3 significant others, and then my parents. This was the American dream story I always wanted to share. Fast forward to March 2020. I'm living in New York with my girlfriend. She's now my wife. We just signed a lease on our first apartment together. COVID breaks out. We decide to pack up our bags, leave our small little apartment in Queens we signed a lease on, and go back home to Bad Axe, Michigan. And I think a lot of young adults did that. We wanted that comfortability of being with family, and my wife and I were no different. So we moved back home, and I immediately take out my camera and I begin filming. Again, I didn't think I was making a documentary. I was just doing what I always loved doing. And that was playing this role as a filmmaker in the family, capturing special moments in video and photography. Little did I know that I was beginning the journey of telling my family's story. It started off with, how does a restaurant navigate the pandemic? So every restaurant, not just in the country, but in the world, had to figure this out. How do we navigate from a business that really did carry out to only doing carry out? And that's what the beginning of the film touches on. But then there was another threat that entered our country, this racial reckoning. See, Bad Axe, Michigan was a place I never thought there would be a Black Lives Matter movement. And in June of 2020, there was. It was beautiful seeing, 200 people from our community come together in solidarity for this very important movement. My parents, they always taught my siblings and I to do the right thing, to speak for people who can't speak for themselves. So we decided to go to this protest and stand in solidarity with this very important movement that we believed in. Well, at that protest, along comes some white supremacists, neo-Nazis. You don't want to meet my sister in a back alley. This is her going face to face with neo-Nazis at the Bad Axe protest. It was around this time where the wheels began to spin, a light bulb went off, and I realized that this American dream story I always wanted to share had to be told right now. There was an urgency because the American dream was being challenged in ways where it never was before. A pandemic, a racial reckoning, AAPI hate, a politically divided nation. It just made sense. So I immediately put together a fundraising trailer to start this film and finish it. We tried to go out to the studios and distributors, any connections I had through my years of being a really amazing coffee runner, working in Hollywood. I tried to pull that together, and everyone said no to this film. But we kept along. We were able to raise at least a small portion of the money we needed. And we decided that after all the backlash that began to come to our community, to carry on. Because, see, when we released this trailer, people weren't happy in Bad X. We started getting social media comments telling our family on our Facebook page, the Rachel's a Bad X Facebook page, that we're not supporting this family anymore because of what they stand for. We're not supporting this family because they support the Black Lives Matter movement. Their son, David, he's just trying to paint Bad X as a racist town. It's all the furthest from the truth it could be. I was just trying to share our story and our experience. And there were many tough conversations that happened within our family. Should we continue with this film? Should we not? Because people were telling us, coming straight up to my mom in the local Walmart saying, I'm not supporting you because your kids showed up at the Black Lives Matter movement and they were instigating those men with their guns. That's discouraging. So after tough conversations, we decided it was important to share a story and to carry on, not even knowing if this film would see the light of day. Well, in March of 2022, not even a year ago, let me back it up, February 2022, not even a year ago, we got this email. Congratulations, we are pleased to invite your work, Bad X, to screen at the 2022 South by Southwest Film Festival. Now, for those of you who don't know, South by Southwest, it's one of the largest film festivals in North America. You can imagine hearing this news was overwhelming and exciting, and people were going to see our film. I didn't have money to complete my film. Like I mentioned, it was just a year ago. I had about $100, and I maxed out all my credit cards, was doing everything I can just to finish this film, after being told no by all the studios. So with the finished film and with the premiere, we thought maybe studios will be interested now. Wasn't the case. Everyone passed all over again. And that was discouraging because this was something I put my blood, sweat, and tears into. And it felt like by hearing no from the likes of Amazon, Apple, Hulu, that they were telling us our story didn't matter. Because the feedback we got from them was, we love this film, we just don't know if there's an audience for it. They were wrong. We showed up to a premiere, which was at a Monday at 12 p.m. Has anyone gone to a movie on a Monday at 12 p.m.? We were not expecting anyone to show up. It was a packed house. It was a sold-out screening. After the lights came up, the credits rolled, the film was met with a standing ovation. I was standing on the stage just like this with my family by my side, and I cried like a baby. All the financial stress I had, it just all went out the window because I was in a room full of strangers, and just hearing how they connected with my family's story, that felt like the win. Well, a week later, little did we know that someone in the audience was from the company IFC Films. They bought the movie. It sent us on this crazy journey that we never could have dreamed of. Went to festivals all around the world, having real difficult but honest conversations about racism, the American dream, the American identity, with complete strangers from California, New York, Arkansas, middle of nowhere, USA. We got the support from Lisa Ling and Kamal Bell, J.J. Abrams, Evil Longoria. This was the film that had no support from the beginning, and now all of a sudden everyone in the documentary industry in Hollywood, they started calling us this little film that could. But there was one true test left. How was the community of Bad X going to react to our story? Because at this point, there were a lot of angry people, a lot of people who didn't want to see this film see the light of day. Bad X opened up in over 30 theaters on Thanksgiving weekend. I decided that I wanted to be there for the screenings, so I showed up unannounced to every screening opening weekend. Full of nerves, full of anxiety, not knowing how our community was going to react to it. Well, at every Q&A, there was always one person in the crowd who would raise their hands and they would say, I don't agree with your family's politics, but thank you for opening up my eyes to an experience I didn't know existed. As you drive into Bad Axe, this is what you see. It's a big Trump sign with Trump flags. For a family that might not agree with those politics, that can be a little intimidating. But the woman who actually owns this sign, she reached out to my mom the day after she saw the film. She said, Rachel, I don't know if you know this, but my husband and I, we own that sign. And I just want to let you know that your family is welcomed here, and we're so proud of the courage you guys displayed in sharing your story. Thank you. You see, the reason why I've always wanted to share my family's story, it was to open up this dialogue, this conversation of what does it mean to be American? Because for someone who so long who struggled with their identity, I didn't know my place. And hearing these individuals, many of them who were skeptical of the film, come up to my family and say, I'm sorry for judging your story before I had a chance to see it myself. It proved to me something that day. I always wanted to believe that cinema had the power to create change beyond the screen, but to be honest, I don't know if I always believed that. After that opening weekend, it became very apparent that cinema does have that power to build the bridge between what we know and what we don't know. I'm so grateful that my family's story was able to play a part in building that bridge. I'm really proud of this photo here. This was on the Hollywood Reporter 2 months ago. That's that little brown boy who wasn't sure what their place was in this country, wasn't sure what their identity was, standing up there with 5 prolific filmmakers sharing my family's story. The woman in the middle is probably going to win the Oscar this year. And to me, that was just crazy. To think that this little film, this little story, was able to make it this far. You see, my parents' American dream, it's not the same as mine. For them, it was about coming to this country, again, keeping your head down, working hard, make a better life for your children. They accomplished that, but my American dream is bigger than that now. It includes that financial stability. It includes wanting to create a better life for my own children whenever we decide to have children, but it's also about having a voice, being able to speak as loudly and proudly as any other person in the room, to be seen as American. To hear the skeptics of the film tell my family that our experiences matter, that's all I ever wanted this film to do. About a month and a half ago, we made the shortlist for the Academy Awards. This little film with no budget, no big financial backing, we were able to beat out a lot of the same studios that were telling us no. I'm very proud of that. See, I leave you with this. Your stories matter. They have a power to make a change, to make a difference. You just need to go out there and tell them. Our voices matter. Our representations matter. And this is how we create change. One conversation, one person at a time. Do that through telling your stories. That's my American dream. Thank you.